Hello everyone and welcome back to the Placement Diary. I am aware it has been quite a while, but as you can probably hear by my questionable voice and tones just now, I'm not been feeling too fantastic, and talking for long periods of time is excuse me, a challenge at best. So I decided, instead of trying to force one out and probably do a little bit more damage to my voice, I thought I'd put it off, and it's gotten to the point now where voice isn't much better, but I'm falling quite far behind. I know 4 days to catch up on here, but anyway, here we go. We just go through it. I'm approaching the last week of the placement, which will be tomorrow. This is a Sunday night that I'm doing this just now. So yeah, that should be really good fun as soon as I get in tomorrow morning. So let's just jump into day 22. We have arrived, circle time, register, hello song, day and weather, free play, Mr. Potato Head, red stories, group time orange, lunch, story quiet, free play, group time orange, free play, and then home. So we'll go into that a little bit more depth. What I've got written here: today was a fairly quiet day as far as my responsibility was concerned. Having a full set of staff meant that each group was present and accounted for by their corresponding members of staff. This gave me a chance to assist the group leaders and take pictures of the children for her. So basically, I stuck myself to the orange group because the deputy head was back this week. I thought, I don't have a group today to actually plan for, so I thought, instead of being idle for that time, I'll go and assist her, help her with her folder and stuff. So I did that. I took pictures and participated in the activity. Sort of just kept behaviour in check as well. Usual supervisory stuff. So that was okay. During free play, I had the chance to set up and monitor some fun activities for the children. So this is where I focused my attentions for the day. I set up a Mr. Potato Head table, as it were. For those of you who are not familiar, Mr. Potato Head's a dolls. One of the leading characters in Toy Story. It's sort of to do with facial recognition. You get a potato and you can stick the hands, the arms, the legs, the basically the everything on it that you can. And it is useful for the younger children to get used to facial recognition, knowing that there's two eyes that go here, there's a nose that goes here, the mouth, So I got to sit down and kind of just play alongside them with that. What have I got written here? I found it pretty particularly useful for the younger children who are very keen to attempt building. Okay, that's fine. After this, I decided to read stories with some of the children as per their request. They brought the bricks that they wanted read to me, and I read aloud to them. By doing this, I was able to introduce new vocabulary to them, question them, and show them the pictures contained within. So again, children's choice. They chose that they wanted the books to hear, and of course when I'm reading, I'm going through them saying what colour was the dinosaur, just making sure they were sort of paying attention, as it were. Did they like the book, did they not like the book? Just early critiquing of literary works, I suppose you could flag that as. So I think it was quite a useful activity, and the children all seemed to enjoy it, so that's really important. The second group segment played it fairly similarly to the first. I assisted the orange group by joining in, taking pictures of the practitioners. Again, nothing out of the ordinary here. There was nothing major sort of activity wise. It was really just singing songs and just playing and making snack, I think, was happening in the afternoon. So again, useful, but at the same time, nothing worth taking real notes about. It was just your average day in the nursery, as it were. I managed to join Twitter last night. I plan on using this to send out daily updates, so this was a thing. As many of you are probably now aware, as per my last video, I'm now on Twitter, so feel free to follow me there. It's been a good outlet. I've already been able to interact with my tutor through that. He's linked me to some interesting things as per language development, and that's something I'm going to come back to in the sort of latter part of this video, so stay tuned for that. Day 22, fairly bog standard. We can close that now. Apologies for looking away, I'm actually reading the things. You can probably see it in the reflection in my glasses. Day 23. Arrived, circle time, register, hello song, day and weather, the usuals. Wednesday was the trip to the gallery. Now this was real interesting. I'm in the middle of constructing a little subsection of my folder just for this trip. We went to the McManus Museum in Dundee. It's kind of just like Dundee's national history, I want to say. It's really hard to put a label on it, as it were, but there was a lot of cool things in there. There was lots of works of art. There were, bones of Wales, stuff from Dundee's past, like I said, like Lemmings, the video game, because of Dundee's video game development companies and such. Old Dundee United football strips, just things like that. The Michelin Man, just other things that were sort of prevalent to the local community. So that was really good fun. Lunch, story quiet time, staff meeting, free play home. So again, no group time today because of the broken up nature of the day. It was an exciting day at nursery today. I was given the opportunity to accompany 2 groups to the McManus Museum. Already said this. Many of the children who attended this trip seemed to really enjoy the fact that they spent time outside of the nursery. The walk to and from the museum was fairly well received as well. So this was interesting. This is where it was going to be kind of make or break. We had fairly sort of middle stage children. They weren't too young, but they weren't the oldest of the old. So they were kind of more responsible, as it were, than the younger ones, and thereby capable of walking the sort of distance that it was. It wasn't a far walk. It was definitely less than a mile, I'd say. I can't get the exact figures as it were right now, but a fairly standard walk. But there was a couple of busy roads on the way. Everything was 100% risk assessed by one of the group leaders. First time that she ever actually risk assessed anything, so that was a good experience for her as well. But she did an admirable job, and we got there safe and sound. The walk to and from, I think they just enjoyed, walking past, the things in the windows, the passing the shops. There was a fire engine that drove past. That was really exciting. Just all things like that. I think the change of scenery was something that was really interesting to some of the children. Okie dokie. Yep, full rundown of the trip and some pictures of the various exhibits can be found in the planning section of my folder. There you go. I can predict the future. Upon our return, we had lunch in the main area of the nursery as usual. The practitioners who were left in the building seemed very happy to have us back today, as today we were almost at full capacity child-wise. As much as I relished the experience of taking the children out of the confines of the nursery, I can't help but wonder if my services could have perhaps been better needed in it. However, I am of the opinion that from an experience and placement standpoint, my time was better spent going on the trip. So that was me kind of just having a little bit of a conflicting opinion there about that day. It was more along the lines of, it was great that I went, and it's really good for the folder. It's really good for seeing how children learn outside of the nursery, but while still in nursery hours. For that reason, it was fantastic. But at the same time, I wasn't feeling guilty. No one made me feel guilty, but I kind of thought, could I have maybe been more use in the nursery because they were kind of short-staffed, as it were. But then again, no one really mentioned this. I think one of the staff members says, upon hindsight, maybe you probably would have been better in here, but it was good that you got to go from your standpoint. I was like, yeah, I know what you mean. So, I don't know, just kind of take that as it is. I'm glad I went, and the practitioners who went on the trip were kind of glad I went as well. So, we'll just leave it at that. In the afternoon, instead of group time, the staff and I had our weekly meeting. A lot of new topic ideas were discussed based on the children's consultations, including the study of insects and sport to coincide with Fit for 14. Fit for 14 is a week that was happening where, as you can probably guess, health and well-being plays precedence, as I can speak English apparently, amongst, sort of schools and stuff. I don't know how many were taking part, but we missed it because it was the week that we had planned it, but instead we're going to do it for this week now, the week approaching. I myself will be taking some of these ideas forward on Friday, when I will have the opportunity to take the green group again, and that is something that did happen, but not on Friday and with the green group, but on Thursday with another group, I believe. Tomorrow I am planning to share the contents of my folder with the nursery manager so that she can comment on the content so far. I have also set up a meeting with the tutor at the university to discuss my folder. This will hopefully reassure me that I am on the right track for placement, and if not, how to improve. Now, this was something that was worrying me. Obviously, at the start of the placement, I had started off proper focused on language development at an early age, and the organisation and planning and buying of resources within the nursery. However, as time went on, that changed dramatically. The children in the nursery speak a very, very highly capable and competent level of English. at all times. There is one child who has some speech issues, but other than that, basically every child in that nursery speaks a very, very high standard of English, even the 2-year-olds. Now this is really impressive and shocking to myself, as a lot of them are bilingual. A lot of them are, to name some countries that are unrelated just to protect identity, we'll say like Eastern European, and some even speak forms of Indian as well. Some even speak more than 2 languages. So I think that might have something to do with the fact that the nursery is part of the university, and a lot of the children are children of students who themselves, obviously being academics, maybe are pushing for encouraging their child to, I don't know, I'm trying to choose my words wisely here, to not sort of criticise or complain about anything. But it's almost like they're pushing their children more, but not in a negative way. They have more attention, more time for the children, something that you might not see in a council nursery, because sometimes children don't have the good background that they need to successfully develop their language over time, because they're just simply not getting that attention, not getting that physical contact, not getting that intellectual discussion that they need in order to progress with language. So again, without straying away too much from the point, the language barrier is almost non-existent, except from in this one child. Now, I could have just focused on this one child and studied this one child, but at the same time, it's kind of like I'm singling this one child out, which would not be good at all, in my opinion. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I wouldn't feel comfortable with just focusing on this one child at all times. But anyway, I digress. The nature of the placement has changed so much. I mean, I found out about all the resource management and how it's ordered, how it's organised, how it's paid for and such within the first couple of weeks. So that was kind of done, it says in my placement proposal I have clear-cut and well-structured goals, or something along those lines, to make myself sound more professional. Yes, they are clear cut, but they're not achievable. If we're going to talk about the goals sort of being realistic. What was it? Is it ROAR? Realistic opportunity? No. There's a form of goals that I'm thinking of that I can't remember what they're called, but one of the criteria for it to be a good goal is for it to be achievable and timed. What is that called again? I'll get back to you with that one. That's going to bug me now. These goals were SMART. Yep. Measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. So, yeah, sorry. I'm completely, absolutely out of it today. But there we go. The goal wasn't a very smart goal, as it were. It was measurable. Yeah. It was realistic. Yeah. But it was not achievable because of the given circumstances. However, I kind of just learned from that. I learned all I could. I knew that I found out there used to be a travelling specialist, as there were, that used to come into the nursery and pick a word a week. Say enormous was her word. She would come in, she would read a book, say the enormous turnip, I know that's a thing. She would read that to the children and use that word as often as possible just to broaden their vocabulary. Great, that's brilliant, but she finished the week after I started. The week before I started. So really couldn't get enough information to cover that. I've heard it from all the staff. I know what the procedure was, but again, it's really no good. It's a bit useless, as it were. But it was interesting to know that kind of service is available. I also have found out about there's a speech and language therapist for children who are struggling to the nth degree, and I think that one child is attending that as of this time. So that's fair enough. I can understand that. I believe she's either attending it now, or when she goes to school at the end of the year, she'll be attending this speech and language therapist. Something that I would need to confirm. But again, massive tangents aside, it changed quite a lot. It's kind of become more of a fact that I'm now integrating into being a member of the staff, and taking activities, monitoring groups, helping out with lunches, making sure the children all have their lunch, going to like stuff like the staff meetings and taking my lunch with the staff, and it's more along the lines that I'm kind of just volunteering as a practitioner, but obviously minus the incredible workload that they have to take on. Well, guess kind of counterbalances with my own, but no, that's not fair to say. They work really hard. Obviously, without all the sort of paperwork that they have to do, I just kind of have filtered in as being kind of a member of the staff. If there's a group that needs taken, I will take it. If it's sort of even if it's last minute, someone couldn't make it in, I'll take the group. Or even if it's planned, I can go outside and supervise the children with the staff as well. It's more become the fact that I am now part of the staff team until I leave. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. I feel like I'm reflecting well on this opportunity because it's given me a lot of experience to work with younger children, which was something I wasn't entirely comfortable with to begin with. I can kind of see myself, when I'm qualified, working more with the sort of middle to upper school, because that's where I feel most comfortable. I feel like at that level the children are, they're a little bit more advanced, and this sounds kind of rude, but they're more capable of further intelligent conversation. In my opinion, of course, this is all just baseless conjecture at this point, but in my personal preference is to be teaching them when they're a little bit older, a little bit more advanced, a little bit more, capable of sort of debate and intelligent conversation. Take last year, for example. When I was on placement, I worked with the primary 4, and sort of that level was fantastic. You were allowed to introduce new topics to them, but when returning to older topics, they would retain that information. You wouldn't have to be always constantly going over things again. There was still some fragment of it left behind, and that kind of development I think is fantastic. Whereas in the nursery, what I've found is, you can do something one week and you can try and remind them next week, and maybe some of them will remember, but a lot of them will maybe just be like, what happened? Because at the end of the day, they're just children and they're there to play. They're there to learn and play, of course, learning through play, but primarily it's all play focused, and that on a personal level doesn't really appeal to me. I find myself, I wouldn't say bored, I don't dislike my placement. I've had a really good time as far as liaising with the staff and interacting with the children has been concerned, but I think that's safe to say I found myself to be fairly, not disengaged with the placement, but just disengaged with the enjoyment, I guess. It's just not as enjoyable as I would have once hoped. I just don't find myself working well with children of that age. So I've rambled a fair amount now. Can we just get back to this day? Yep, I've rambled for a good 5-10 minutes. What are we on? Day 24. The meeting, of course. The meeting I set up with, I originally was going to set it up with my placement tutor, the tutor who's responsible for overseeing my placement, as it were. Originally I was going to set it up with him, but a sort of last minute decision to change to just go straight to the module leader. Nothing personal against my placement tutor by any way, shape or form. I would have loved to have gone and done it, sort of seen it with him, but I got an email through from the module leader that said, if you have any problems with placement, come to me. So I thought, well, she's kind of inviting me as it were. I know that if I contacted Derek at the time, it would have been absolutely fine. He would have been able to see me, and ironically, when I went to see Susan, he was in his room. So I could have easily went to see him, but just through circumstance, because it was on my mind at the time, and then I got the email through from Susan, I chose to go and see her instead, just because she obviously is in charge of the module and she knows sort of exactly what's been looking for. Because this was worrying me how much this had changed. I've done my best to document everything that's happened. I've tried really hard to reflect upon everything in a positive light, sometimes in a negative light if it so calls for it, similar to what I just did maybe 5 minutes ago there. But I kind of felt like I wasn't, because last year's placement was so intense, there was so many roar tasks and other things to do, so many lesson plans to write up, and I found myself doing a lot less work this year. Now, not through laziness, don't get me wrong, but through just sheer, what's the word? Just workload was just a huge relief, as it were. I'm in the nursery longer during the day than I was in the school, But when I was in the school, when the school closed, I was staying in till like 6, 7 o'clock at night, typing everything up, and then when I was getting home I was having a quick dinner, and then I was typing it up again and preparing stuff for the next day, and then going to bed, and then getting up, and then rinse repeat for a good 4 weeks at a time. And that was really heavy going, especially in first year. That was kind of a sink or swim moment for me, and I enjoyed it. I rose to the challenge as far as I'm aware. I'm still here, I passed the placement. My tutor for placement seemed to think I'd put a lot of effort in as well. I had done well, my practice had definitely improved since I'd been there. But on this placement, I kind of feel like I'm not doing as much. Now, don't get me wrong, I've learned a lot of things. I've learned effective ways of planning based on the relevance and the interests of the children. That's great. I've learned how to work better alongside the younger children. I was kind of treating them like I would treat the primary fours at first. And I found out very quickly this is not okay. They don't know the same amount of words. They don't react the same way to when I put my hand up. They won't all stop talking, sort of thing. That they're children. They're very young children. And that kind of frightened me a little bit at first. But as it were, they've warmed to me and it's fine. And I feel like I can communicate with them now on a much better level because I'm used to them. So that's definitely a benefit. I've also learned about the importance of making resources that you order relevant to the children. It's great if you want to order a big textbook that's got everything that you want to cover in the curriculum in it, but if the children aren't going to engage with that, then that's not going to be any good. I've witnessed firsthand resources in the nursery being ordered based on children's requests. We had those magnetic polydrons, and because they were so popular, children were fighting over them, so the nursery manager was like, well, let's get more. So she ended up getting like 3 boxes more, and they remain ever popular. So that's always a good bonus as well. And I'm glad that I'm here for the placement. And I was glad that I had that meeting with my tutor because, well, not my tutor, sorry, with the module leader, because she completely set my mind at ease. She's like, your folder looks good, you look like you've put a lot of work in. This folder actually isn't assessed, it's all 100% on your Viva, your meeting at the end. I was like, oh dear, probably should have known that. But never mind. She said, everything here looks fine, but as long as you've not completely disengaged with your placement, you seem to be reflecting on things well. You've got your video diary, you've got a physical copy here as well, you've got your planning all in the folder. It looks like you'll have a lot to discuss when you meet your tutor. So that really put my mind at ease, because it was something that was genuinely worrying me. I mean, I've not had the best of times, not on placement, but with personal things outside of the placement on the lead up to my first week. And by about week 4, sorry, not week 4, week 3, I was kind of not feeling too great about the whole thing. I was kind of, I wouldn't say depressed because that's a very strong word, but I was kind of just upset. Wasn't really sleeping at night, so I was kind of swung out my sleeping pattern just because just having banging sore heads from coming in from the noisy nursery, and then falling asleep, and then waking up at like 10 at night being like, oh no, now and trying to get back to sleep, not getting to sleep till like 4. Not great. There's been a few times where I've had to just force myself to stay up with a migraine because I'm not going to be able to sleep at night if I go to bed now, sort of thing. But it's kind of all coming together for this last week, and I'm really looking forward to it. I haven't really said that about a week in nursery since the first week, which is quite upsetting in some ways, but I am really looking forward to this week. Not because I'm finishing, don't take it as that, but because I'm finally at that stage now, I feel, where I'm comfortable enough with the children, I'm comfortable enough with the staff, that I can go in there and I can, have a really, really successful week. I can have a really good time engaging with the children, I can have a really good time engaging with the staff, and I can have a really good time just closing out this placement with a bang, hopefully. I plan on having an afternoon party for them on the Friday, so that should be really good. Really looking forward to that. Okay, 2 more days. I'll kind of just whiz through them because I've already rambled too much in this video. Day 24, arrived, circle, register, hello song, day weather, free play. Group time, I had to take the yellow group, lunch, story quiet, free play and outside. Group time again, took the yellow group again, free play and home. The yellow group were kind of dropped on me today. I had no idea that I was meant to be taking them. It wasn't really discussed with me. I think it wasn't anyone's fault, as it were. I just think it kind of got a bit lost in translation. Some people thought that I knew I was. Other people were like, no, Ewan was never told. And then eventually it just got to the point I was like, okay, look, I'll just not wing it, but I'll adapt to the situation. I will take the group and I will do what I can with them. So here we go. Today was a very eventful day indeed. I had the opportunity to play host to various different activities throughout my stay, and the feedback the children provided was overall positive. Excellent. First of all, I presented the staff with a newly drafted questionnaire. Of course, my questionnaire. And that is something that I will have to share on tomorrow's video. I drafted up a questionnaire on Google Docs talking about the development of language at an early age and how it is dealt with in nursery and primary schools, just to get the sort of public's opinion. There's one questionnaire with various questions, and there's 3 options for who you are: general member of the public, 4, general member of the public, an MA education student, member of staff at a nursery, or a parent or child of a young person who is currently at nursery or at primary school. And it's just I don't even know what to describe it as. It's a way of me for getting information to see how well people think the nursery does and primary schools in Scotland do with covering language as a whole. And when I say language, I question them. What do they think that means? I have a big list of options, like what covers, what do you think is covered in language? What would come under the heading of language? I think I have like drama and literacy in English, reading, writing, just lots of options at what it could be. I threw a couple of like curveballs in there just to make sure people aren't just ticking all the boxes. I have like physical education, which could be adapted to work with language, but primarily is its own beast. It's not a language activity as such. So I've had a look at some of the results, and there's been some pretty interesting ones. A lot of people, one of the questions describes how well do you think language is being covered in nurseries in Scotland as a whole. Now, a lot of people have just put that they don't know, which is kind of worrying, actually. I think people are kind of oblivious to how much goes on in the nurseries, how much language development is being covered, especially in my experience with this nursery anyway. I know that it's of a very, very high standard, as I've discussed previously in this very video. So it was really interesting to note that the sort of, as it stands just now, the majority of people I think have put either they don't know or they don't think it's been covered very well at all. So yeah, that's pretty interesting stuff. It'll be good, conversation fodder, especially for when I'm on my placement meeting. I'd like to share my results with my my placement tutor next Monday. I really quite excited to share those results with him. It's really good to get another perspective on that, I think. So anyway, during my first segment of free play, I decided to once again take charge of the art area. That's something I've been doing quite often. The children had decided that they were very interested in making masks after one child suggested it, and oh goodness me, this was a very, very long day. Just remembering this now. Basically, lots of masks were printed off the internet, just A4 bits of paper, and give them to a room full of nursery children. They can't cut it out, they can't cut the eyes out, they can't string things through. I'm not just being condescending to children or making out like it's a big deal, but I was getting them to try, and a lot of them were just wrecking their masks because they haven't really got the motor skills, as it were, yet to hold the scissors correctly, to correctly pinpoint where it needs to be stuck down. So I tried to explain it to them as I was doing it, but I eventually got to the point where I was a glorified carnival worker, just cutting out masks for children for a good 3 hours, and by the end of that my head was absolutely splitting. It wasn't good fun. I'm sure it was great for the children, and that's what it's all for at the end of the day. I'm glad that they enjoyed the finished products. But they took it off and then they were spinning it around and then their masks were breaking and I had to make more. It was interesting. Very, very interesting, we shall say. But being completely honest, arts and crafts aren't my strong point yet, but this is where things get interesting. So it frightened me a little at first. However, the experience of being taken out of my comfort zone in a high pressure situation proved to be overall beneficial. I will now be more confident with activities of this nature in the future. That much is true. I made so many masks that afternoon. You know, there's about 40 children and they were all coming to me for their masks. So it was good experience in that regard, you know, just to be put on the spot with someone I'm not comfortable with and just told to do it, you know, sink or swim. And it looks like I swam because they all went home with fantastic masks. Got a couple of pictures of them in my folder as well. During the first group time, the yellow and orange group merged to go outside. Yeah, because I was kind of dropped on the weekend, dropped out into the deep end, saying, you know, you have these groups this afternoon, you have this group this morning and this afternoon. Sorry if that wasn't made clear, sort of thing. I said, okay, well, can I merge with someone for this morning? Then I can plan something for the afternoon. Because I do have some backup plans, but nothing. The area that I wanted to be used was being used. In that morning, so I says, look, can I just join up with someone to do something else just now and I'll do my activity in the afternoon? They were like, yeah, that's absolutely fine. So the yellow and orange group merged. This gave me a chance to liaise with the deputy manager as she's responsible for the orange group. Hooray. We discussed various things pertaining to the placement as a whole. The discussion was fairly useful and it allowed us to reflect together. So yeah, that was really good fun. Me and the deputy manager, we took the children outside to play with some of the outside toys like bicycles and stuff. Well, tricycles, I guess. Let's not get too carried away. The children aren't that far advanced. But yeah, we got a chance to, you know, just discuss placement as a whole. She was like, yeah, I mean, you've been coming in, you've been doing good work. I just hope you're getting out of it what you want to get out of it. I was like, yeah, I really feel that I am. And she was like, well, in that case, I have absolutely no problems. So that was nice. I really liked that. After lunch, I had to discipline a child who refused to behave. Oh, this was fun. I followed the nursery's regulations on how to sanction him by removing him from the group and placing him on a chair alone. This proved pretty ineffective in the grand scheme of things. Perhaps in the future the child will think twice about behaving poorly again. If not, I will raise a concern with the manager. Yeah, child... I have so many child L's. One of the child L's. We'll say child LM for... No, there's two child LMs. You know what? Forget it. Child L, okay, almost a disaster there, was really pushing the buttons of myself and all of the staff members and all the children. He just would not behave. He was putting his feet up on the wall, you know, rolling around crazy. And this is where, you know, this is one of the finer points of nursery that makes it impossible for me to deal with, because in a primary school situation, I would take that child outside and I would discipline the child fairly, but I would raise concern, you know, there would be concern in my voice. I'd be like, do you think that is an acceptable way behaved? You know, raise my voice a little bit so the child gets the message. But in the nursery, as I've found when I have tried this in the past, children tend to just start crying. Now, some would say that's not a bad thing. You know, the child obviously then feels responsible and, you know, bad, and, you know, that they know that they've done wrong and that they'll think about that in the future. Yeah, but at the same time, they're very young children. You know, they don't know better as of yet, and that's your job to make them know better. But the nursery as a whole doesn't really take to the whole raising your voice thing. And when I discussed this with the manager before, she says, yeah, that's kind of, I would view that as bad practice coming from this nursery sector. I thought, you know, maybe that's just one woman's opinion in the building. I spoke to other members of staff and they all seemed to agree with her. They says, well, that's really not the way that we would discipline the children. I was like, okay, well, you know, teach me. And they did. They told me the way that we do it. We remove them from the circle. We sit them down, we talk to them, and then we, you know, make them sit on their own if it just escalates, and then reintroduce them to the circle whenever the time occurs, that whenever we feel that they've learned from it. But this child is ready for school. That's something that I've discussed before. Maybe not academically, but mentally this child is ready for school. He's a very, very, very bright young boy, to the point where he will try and manipulate members of staff. You know, saying things like, oh, insert practitioner's name here said it was okay, and thus making the rest of us have to go and question that member of staff, to which she'll reply, no, I did not say that at all. That's a problem, you know. It's something that's very difficult to deal with. But yeah, like I said, if this was a child in my class in a primary school, I would remove him completely the way this child was behaving, because as soon as I sat him down and started speaking to him, saying, "Do you think that's a good way to behave? Do you think that's a good way?" Just at this calm tone of voice, he's just sitting there grinning away, thinking he's like an absolute, I don't know what the word to use, the cock of the north. Something my mum used to say, he was just like strutting about proud, like not caring at all, showing no signs of remorse. He was just laughing and smiling. I was like, "Do you think this is funny?" Even there, I'm not even raising my voice at all. And he's just smiling away, giggling. And then I was like, "Go and face the wall," sort of thing. I went and made him sit down at the wall. And he's just sitting there, just bouncing up and down, running up the walls and giggling away to himself. And it's not good. It's just not the way that I would deal with this. The sort of behaviour management within the nursery is very effective. I think for 99.9% of the children, this behaviour management strategy works because they are of that age. But for this sort of maybe 1% of children who are ready to move on to school, it's borderline completely ineffective. The child shows no remorse, he doesn't care, the form gets filled out, mum and dad don't care about it when they hear about it when he goes home, and he's kind of just let off with knowing that's acceptable behaviour, or thinking that's acceptable behaviour. And that really just doesn't wash with me at all. Personally, I would take the child away from the circle into a quiet room and sort of just, say what the nursery is saying. I think that their choice of dialogue is fantastic. They're not saying this is bad, you're a terrible child. They're not doing anything like that. They're saying, "Do you think that's acceptable? Do you think that your friends would like you to behave like that?" But it's just so soft spoken, and yeah, it's not effective at all. I know from experience when I've had to discipline children in a primary school, when I raise my voice, not to appear sexist, but because obviously being a male and having a deeper voice and occasionally a louder voice, it can kind of be more not threatening but authoritative. And in the past, when I've had to discipline children in such a manner, taking them away outside, it's been very effective. It's not something that I think I would like to say that I'm great at. It's something that I would definitely need practice with, because I'm here at the university to learn how to be a teacher. I'm not capable of doing that already, but it's something that I feel like I'm pretty okay at. I think I'm good at doing that, and the results in the past have shown this. But having to tone it down and dial it back for the nursery is something that I've really struggled with, being 100% honest. I don't like having to sort of be calm, because the child knows that he's doing something wrong and he's really just getting away with it. He's kind of taunting you, as it were, kind of saying, "You're not going to do anything because that's not how this place operates. You're just going to talk to me and then I'm just going to get away with it." There's no real punishment. But when he goes to school, I can't help but feel like it's going to hit him like a ton of bricks. But again, that's really not my place to say, as it were. Anyway, big tangents again, because that seems to be the theme of today's video. During the second period of group time, I once again took the yellow group. Here we go. This is the one that I had planned based on the Wednesday planning session, or yesterday, I guess, if we're talking in video days. They really wanted to study insects. A lot of the groups were kind of doing things like that, so I thought, you know what, here we go, we'll make spiders. This is something that I kind of just thought of off the cuff one day, and I thought, yeah, this will be really useful. So basically what they did was they got paper plates, they coloured them in brown or black pen because there wasn't enough pens, and stuck pipe cleaners on, 8 pipe cleaners. Obviously, I was bringing maths into it, language. This was giving them the 8 legs of having a spider. Then they would draw their own face on the spider. So I've got pictures of that in the planning section of my folder. I haven't as of yet drafted up a lesson plan for it, just because time was constraining last week. Just mostly because the nursery was so busy, and we had the trip and I had to do things for that, prepare, take all the pictures, get all the pictures off for that, write up a sort of summary of that, and I just never really got around to writing this down in a proper lesson plan format. Now that might be something that I do, might be something that I just miss out, because at the end of the day it was a 15-20 minute activity that I just did. So pictures of course were taken, and those will be in my folder as well. They seem to really enjoy it as well. And that's the end of that day. Final day. Apologies for taking so long here. Arrive, circle time, register, hello song, day and weather. Free play, group time, lunch, story quiet time, free play, fun Friday, free play and home. Yeah, so Fridays are a bit more relaxed in the nursery. Just quickly mention that throughout the days that I've mentioned there have been odd occasions where I've been taking the morning register and taking the afternoon register, so I just thought I'd mention that just now. It's not, I didn't want to reflect on it. I reflected on it when I did it the first time, and now it's just kind of become the norm for me to do that. So okay, today marked the closing of my 5th week on placement. After the meeting, let's kind of correct my own writing here. After the meeting with the module leader last night, I now feel a lot more confident in my role here. I had previously had doubts due to the severity of the changing goals for me, but now my mind is completely at ease. I will talk about this in depth during my placement review and exit meeting next week. During the free play segment of the morning, I assumed responsibility for the magnetic polydron table. It was as interesting as ever to see the weird and wonderful models that children were able to create, especially when they were using the new shapes that were ordered. I managed to do this again in the afternoon, and even had a chance to fill in a spontaneous observation sheet for one of the children. In the planning section of my folder is that observation sheet, minus the picture of the child and minus all the names. During group time, I took the green group once again. We had the chance to do some drawing and playing with musical instruments. Now, I knew I was taking the green group today, and I originally just wanted to do the spiders with them because they seemed like they wanted to do that when they saw me doing it the other day. But I thought this would be a good opportunity to... That's the end of that as well. This would be a good opportunity for me to try something new, wherein I kind of acted upon the wishes of the children then and there. So I went round every member of the group during free play and asked them what would they like to do. What would they like to do for group time? And they said, we want to do drawing, and some said we want to play with the musical instruments. One child said we want to do drama. I said no because I had already done drama recently with the green group, and also the day before their group leader had done drama with them. There was no way that we were doing that again. It's just this one child who wants to be the big bad wolf all the time. So I kind of just made an amalgamation of the two. I was like, well, okay, then let's see if this works. I gave them the opportunity to draw. I gave them a goal. I said, if you want to draw something in particular, you can maybe draw some of the musical instruments, put the musical instruments out so the children can play with them at the same time. Now, my original thoughts were they'll all just flock to the instruments and play them the whole time, and then it'll just be a big noise, and that'll be fine because they'll be experimenting. That's fine. But it was actually fairly divided. Some sat at the art table for the majority of the time, some sat at music for the majority of the time, but everyone managed to do both, which is great. It shows that if you're gonna appeal to the children's interests, they're gonna go for it. That's what they're interested in. And that worked pretty well, so I'm glad I tried it out, and I'm glad it had success. So, huge video. I didn't even plan for it to be as long as this, but again, there's been many a ramble, and also I'm covering 4 days in one go. So, thank you very much for watching once again. Hopefully this final week will be as beneficial and as fruitful as every week has been this far, and hopefully on Monday my Viva, whatever you want to call it, the placement meeting at the end, will be a success, and I will look forward to getting on placement again in 3rd year, where I will again make a video diary. I think this is going to be a good way of me keeping myself up to date and keeping everyone else up to date as well. So if you've not done so already, feel free to follow me on Twitter. It's at Mr. Dixon Online. That's a thing. I remember it now. And be sure to subscribe if you want to see these videos more often. I will see you tomorrow. Bye bye.